we're tired. We're tired of being on screens. We're tired of just hearing long droshes on Zoom. Baruch Hashem, I've had the privilege for 15 years, except for the one year where I actually gave birth to my child, who I named after Phylis, for giving this shiur. And both Joe and I were like humming and hawing about like, what should we do this year that's interesting? We spoke about grit. We've done that. We spoke about, the pandemic and all the lessons it's taught us, and we've done that. And we've just done, everyone's heard it all. So what can we do, or could we do for Phylis's Yortzeit this year? We came up with this idea of actually, I don't know why can everyone hear me properly now? We came up with this idea of actually not hearing so much from me. I will open with a couple of Divrei Torah, but really hearing 15 years down the line about how Phylis's legacy has really continued to manifest in her family, in her friends, in her grandchildren, in the school named after her, in so many spaces in which actually Phylis still resides. So I'll start off with my little dvar, and then I'd like to open it. So Birshut HaRabbanim, I see Rabbi Thurgood's on, and many of those who are much more wise and learned than me. I always start off with the number of years, because I think sometimes we forget the passage of time, and especially during these corona times, time is taken on a very strange, concertinaed, long but short, intense but stretched way. And when we think 15 years, some of us have children maybe close to 15, or we've been retired for 15 years, or we've been married for 15 years, it gives us a sense of what 15 is. And in many ways, it's quite a long time. And I was trying to think, what could be the significance of this year of 15? And there are two things that came to mind in terms of gematria, which is the numerical value of the Hebrew letters. The first is the word two. Tet Vav equals 15. We've got Tu B'Av, Tu B'Shvat, and two minor chagim, but really lovely ones. But one of the things that happens on the 15th of the month is that the moon is at its brightest. And there's something about this dark time that we're in where something like this, a magnificent woman, really shines a very bright moon that can continue to lead us on our way. And Be'ezrat Hashem, with the help of God, Phylis's legacy will. The other gematria numerical value that I thought of that also is 15 is the letters of God's name, Yud and Hey. Yud being the numerical value of 10, and Hey being the numerical value of 5. Now, what's very interesting about this specific name of God is that it's almost like an abbreviation, or it's a half name of God. And it says that at the moment, while we're still in exile, while we still don't have true revelation, while we still don't have ultimate insight into how the world works, we can use this name of Ka, of Yud and Hey, to describe Hashem. But it says that when, Mashiach comes, when we finally have the redemption, we'll use the name Hallelujah, that it's the full name and God's full, full glory. And it made me think a little bit again of the moon, which I referenced in a few minutes ago, where we had two bright lights, the sun and the moon, but the moon was diminished. And yet the moon is often compared to a woman. But when Mashiach comes, the moon and the sun will both reign supreme. And so while we're in these difficult times, we use the word Ka, we use the word part of Hashem's name. And even though on the 15th, or the number 15 is where the moon shines the brightest, it's still a moon without its ultimate glory. but we hope in the future that it will actually come to its brightest glory. And certainly Phylis was one who depicted the moon so powerfully. She never took any glory for herself. It was only everybody else's glory that was reflected on a few months before Phylis passed away. She had her 69th birthday. In true Phylis style, on the patio with pretty things and pretty flowers, and all her close friends coming and reading passages. And those much more literary, I see Adrian nodding her head, we're bringing Shakespeare and all sorts of, I have no brain cells at the moment, very many literary figures to bring readings for Phylis. But for me, my reading was a simple one, yet a very beautiful one, of Eshet Chayil, and I wish I could remember the specific verse that I used, but I can't. But tonight, I just want to reminisce about that time, and I've seen quite a few of you that were actually at that 69th birthday party, and just one unusual pasuk, maybe an unusual verse from Eshet Chayil. So it says, Kappa Parsaliani, that her palms are open to the poor, V'yadeha shilcha bekishor, and her hands are stretched out onto a loom. And the Midrash tells us that this actually refers to one of our heroines in Tanakh, and her name was Yael. And what did Yael do? During one of the warring tribes, Sisera, one of the great enemy generals, was causing absolute havoc. The Jews, everyone was in a terrible state, but Sisera was a very, very powerful warlord, and he manages the Jews were doing quite well, but he manages to escape, and he runs into Yael's tent.
Is it frozen for everyone?
Just a little bit.
Yep, it's for me.
It's a bit broken up.
We
thought the expression was what Yael looked like when you rushed into a tent.
You froze for a little bit, Nat.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so Sisera.
Into the tent.
He ran into a tent.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. He runs into a tent. She wines and dines him. He gets a little bit tired. And then, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you can hear
Yes.
me now? Sorry, I've just got my technician here, just making sure that my Wi-Fi is up to scratch. Give me 1 sec.
Hello, everybody.
Shit. Josh is negative again. Huh?
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Oh, I'm on.
Yes,
Okay,
you're good.
great. So Yael runs into Sisera's tent, and Sisera runs into Yael's tent. She wines and dines him, and as he's getting a bit sleepy, she kills him with a tent peg. Now, when one thinks of a general, there's no doubt that Sisera ran in with huge armor, swords and spears, and I'm not a big maven on the different kinds of war implements of the time. But it seems very strange that Yael didn't take one of his war implements and kill him with that. Why a tent peg? And I heard the most beautiful, beautiful explanation. You can imagine how her heart was pounding and beating. She knew she literally had the war in her hands. And yet she was a person of peace. Yael was somebody who had never been involved in war. And so even at a time of great need, she always went back to her personal and her natural identity and her natural way. And so she couldn't bring herself to use a sword or a spear. She used another implement. What does this have to do with Eshet Chayil or Phylis? So let's go back to the pasuk. V'yadeha shilcha b'kishor. Her hands are stretched with a loom. A loom is something around which one puts, fabric, material to make something. But it's intertwined with who you are. What was so fascinating for me about Phylis was even in those last, what was it, Joe, like maybe 3 months, when she got a very difficult and what seemed to be a diagnosis that was very harsh. Phylis just carried on with her nature and exactly as she was. In fact, in the Jowell home, Jonathan Sachs was hosted for a Phylis Jowell school function. Phylis carried on because her life and her loom continued. She was so intertwined with her values of hosting, of chesed, of making sure that everybody else was okay, of making sure that things ran smoothly for everyone, including her children, that she couldn't defy her nature even under such difficult circumstances. And this is why this midrash about Jael resonated with me so much. It's something so powerful for us to learn, because in difficult times that we're going through, we could give 10 million excuses about why we can't do the chesed, we can't give the tzedakah, we can't do the usual things that we do. But let's learn from Yael, and certainly let's learn from Phylis, that her values were so tight, so tightly wound around her being and her neshama, that there was nothing else that she could do except holding her values as firm as possible. And as we move into our second, even greater than our second part of Elul, really gearing up for Rosh Hashanah, a new year that we really daven should be sweet and kind to us, that we should have health. Let's recommit, even in honor of Phylis, Pesach Sarah, that we recommit to the values that we hold so dear, that she held so dear, and that her family holds dear with her. And please God, it should just be a year filled with goodness and sweetness. Ketiva v'chatima tova to everybody. Maybe be written and inscribed for a good, happy, and healthy new year. Okay. So what I'd like to do, I've got a list of people that have agreed to speak. And for those of you that either forgot or didn't want to at the time, but now feel like they'd like to, we will have an open mic session after our list. Of course, our first speaker is Cecil, Phylis's husband for many, many years, and a true inspiration, certainly to me, and to so many, a businessman, a philanthropist. And I visited Cecil a few months ago when we were in Cape Town, and I'm always inspired by his interesting ideas on the world that are refreshing and new. And Cecil, it's wonderful to see you, and it's so wonderful to know that you're with your children in America. So I invite you to speak to us first.
Well, Natalie, fortunately or unfortunately, I couldn't make out the speakers are reverberating a bit here, so I couldn't hear whether you were complimenting or insulting me. But and I know the difference, and I know you know there's a very big difference. So anyway, firstly, if I can say thank you to you for coming tonight and playing the chairperson as you have done every night during these shiurs for Phylis, and they've got a very firm place in my diary that I must see that I'm somewhere where I can be available, because we've really all found them very meaningful. Me and the children and a few of the others who we talked to. They remember Phylis, remember her very well, almost as if she was here yesterday. And that makes it all the more difficult in some ways for me, but it's great to have you here. All of you, thank you very much indeed for coming. We really appreciate it. And we hope we'll give you some good laughs and some joy during the course of the evening when we're listening to various people speak. I have a number of stories about Phylis, but I think the one that really most typified her manner and her values and her interest in things was when she came up to Springbok. She'd been to Springbok once beforehand, but I think the first time we went, we flew. So the second time we went, we drove up. And as we were driving up, after we came to Garis, which is about 100 kilometers from Springbok, I sort of said to her, well, we'll be there shortly. And so we started driving towards Garis, which you could see from high up on the hill. It was a very small town. And she said, is that it? So I said, yeah, no, wait a minute, I think it isn't. And so she said, oh. So I saw sort of a slight sigh of relief. And then we went on and we were coming close to Kamiskroon, which is about 60 kilometers from Springbok. And she said, is that it? So I said, yeah, that looks like it. And as we went forward, she, I could see she was holding herself in. She wasn't saying anything. And then as we got into, before Kamiskroon, she said, well, it looks like a very charming little village. Now, Kamiskroon is not a charming village, but she made it into a charming village by looking at it that way. And that was her way. She did make things very interesting, even if I found that they weren't particularly interesting. After I'd seen it through her eyes, I found that it was quite the reverse. But just to give a very brief little anecdote of what happened when she had just arrived, almost the second or third day when she was there was a meeting of the Vroue Landbouvereniging, the Women's Agricultural Union, which was a sort of WISO or Zionist group for Afrikaans people and for the people of the town. So there was a good complement of people, and they would have 40 or 50 up to 60 people at their meetings. And she went along to this meeting. Now, she could speak Afrikaans fairly well. When she was about 10 or 11, she was, because of her asthma or a chest, they sent her to Bloemfontein for school, and that was a dual medium. So she spoke Afrikaans very naturally and with a very good accent. But at this meeting, they were deciding who could take the collection boxes that the RCFF used to put out at some meetings that were attended by the inhabitants of the villages, who could put out a collection box for the RCFF for their funds. So people were volunteering to take the collection boxes to various places, to Oukiep, to Nababib, one even to Kamiskroon and Mesklip across the road. They were all fairly close by. And then the chairperson said, well, now the last one we got is for Onsip Kans. Who will take it there? So there was a silence. Nobody wanted to go to Onsip Kans because they all knew that Onsip Kans was a long way away over very bad roads, and they didn't really want to do it. Phylis had, of course, not the slightest idea where it was, but imagine that everything must be close by, like it's in the city. When you go to the suburbs, they're all close by. And she said, oh, well, I'll go, and I'll take it. And so it was a sort of a look at her, and everybody was really surprised that this new person in Springbok was prepared to go all that distance over all those bad roads and just to take the collection box there. So when I heard about this afterwards, I said to her, well, can't go to Onsipkans because you won't be able to handle the roads. So she said, well, she has to take it, so we'll have to make a plan. When we made a plan, we got Johnny Peters, our petrol attendant who'd been working for the family and the company for many years. He knew the roads well and he knew the place well. So Phylis insisted on going with him, and it was about a 4-hour drive to Onsipkans. And the roads were bad, and she came back and she was dusty and tired, but she absolutely glorified in it. She so enjoyed it because Johnny was a talker, and he would tell her about all the things along the road and all the things about the village that she didn't know and all the things about the Namaqualand people that she didn't know, that he thought that she would resonate with, because he'd seen her and been with her for a few times beforehand, and he knew she would fit into the village very well. And that she absolutely did. She not only because she spoke Afrikaans, because she had a real interest in everybody and everybody's problems. And people very much loved her. They were enjoyed with being with her, as we all did. And so let me just say thank you again to all of you for coming. I hope to hear your stories, and if they're funny ones, to laugh at them, and the sad ones, well, we won't cry. Thank you very much. Thank you. And Natalie, thank you again for coming and being the chairperson.
A real honor. So you get a few different kinds of mothers. You get those mothers that walk around with pictures of their children, and you just have to see how cute and how beautifully dressed they are. And then you get those mothers who tell everybody how fabulous their children are. And while the Jowell children are very fabulous and each in their own way have done marvelous things in the world, Phylis was neither of those two. She never boasted about her children or their accomplishments, of which there were many. But there was one way that she was about her children, and that was the deepest, most incredible dedication and love for them. When she spoke to me about her children, she would just speak about how much she loved, adored, and her dedication to them was unsurpassed. And so we'd like to hear now from Phylis's children, who really do carry so much of her in them in different ways. So we're going to start with Sharon, Mark, and then Joe.
So I actually have a mother story. So my mother was everything in how you describe, and how you always describe her. Like gentle and compassionate and empathetic, and as a mother, she was also quite clever. There was one day where I ran away from home, which I had a temper. And ran away from home and took my poodle with me and went to my friend. It was like a 2-hour walk, and I went to my friend, and I got to my friend's house, and I didn't call my mother. I just stayed there for the rest of the day. And I assume that my friend's mom called my mom, and so she knew where I was. But I was assuming she'd be just terrified and didn't know where I was or the dog was. Anyway, that night I was there all day, and that night my mother comes and she brings me a sleeping bag and she takes back the dog. And that's the ultimate in understanding your children. This is I was home very quickly by the next day. So it's I can't. I'm not the same mother as my mother, but I see that in my children. I see so much of her values and her spirit, so that I think it's passed through that way. And not only do we have memories, but we have characteristics that represent her.
Nice.
Mark?
Hey, can you hear? Yeah. So I mean, there's so many stories one would love to share. I'm going to share one which is always very vivid for me. I'm not sure how strongly it will resonate with the non-Americans, but I'm going to tell it anyway. And how this epitomized for me one of her most magnificent characteristics. It was 20 years ago or so, and it was pre-cell phones, and there was an extended family wedding, Bruce's sister, and we were staying at the Ritz-Carlton in downtown Cleveland. And we get a call from the receptionist saying somebody here to see you. My mom had just arrived and said, come up to the 14th floor and I will be waiting for you outside the elevator. So I go, I wait, the elevator opens, and I hear, bye, Phyllis, lovely meeting you, Phyllis, bye, Phyllis. And my mom walks out and is like, bye. And I look inside, and inside is Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Dennis Rodman. Now, for those who don't know them, they were the three most famous people in the world for a long time. They led the Bulls, the top basketball team, to a series of championships and were completely unsurpassed, right? And these were people who nobody would speak to. You know, they wouldn't speak to anybody unless you were a superstar or the president. And I'm standing there like absolutely flabbergasted. And I'm like, mom's chatting away and like, and I'm like, what happened? And she's like, how do they know your name? And she said, well, we were chatting. And I said, how did you start chatting with them? And mom said, well, I went into the elevator and I looked around, because these were 6'8" guys. I looked around and I said, gosh, you chaps are tall. What do you do? And that was the most, Phyllis, everything about her just kind of epitomized, this kind of innocence about the world around her, this absolute ability to engage with everybody. Everybody who met her was touched by her. I've no doubt that they were as well. But the ability to reach out, to connect naturally, and to have the most famous people in the world learn her name and interact with her was part of how she was and how she was with everybody. And I remember after she died, getting kind of emails from people whom I barely remembered and who said it made such a difference meeting your mother. And there's probably one encounter, half an hour, and she spread the light that she had, she spread the compassion that she had, she spread the joy that she had in everything she saw all around her. So my story, and it's a great story if you're American. Thank you, Natalie. Back over to you.
Okay, we have Simone up next. Being Facebook friends with someone, you can always get a glimpse into their lives. Certainly magnificent pictures living in Ohio, wherever that is. And just what I know for sure that you and Phyllis have in common, is just pure simplicity and getting back to the basics of life. So Simone, please tell us your story.
Yes, Simone.
She was on a little earlier. Maybe she dropped off. Natalie, you want to move on, and I'll just find out where Simone is.
Sure.
Okay, I'll go. I'll speak now then.
Joe, did I leave you out? I did. I skipped.
Yeah, but I'm used to it. My father, forgets my name when he goes.
I saw you were at the end again. Sorry, Joe.
Youngest child syndrome.
I'm happy to go anytime, but while we're waiting for Simone, I'll just throw in some stuff because I'm sure I'll find more. It's so funny because it is just the way it always works. So I've switched my view, so now that I can see everybody or almost everybody, and I've been so looking forward to tonight because, and I said it to you guys in my intro or my little invitation to everybody, that really what prompted the idea of sharing memories, well, it was Natalie, firstly, whose idea it initially was, but why it really made a lot of sense to me is because had this experience of lighting the yahrzeit candle and wanting to tell stories with my kids. And my brother's always so good at like going through the books that my mom wrote with his kids, and my sister seems to have this like wealth of like great stories, and my dad obviously does, and I just like drew this blank and in telling stories, which is also strange because I'm a writer, so isn't that like what I'm meant to be able to do, like just easily. And so I've been so looking forward to hearing everybody else's stories and memories so that I can kind of fill up my own treasure trove and make your memories and stories mine. And so we are recording this, and I am making little notes as we go so that I can, you know, put it down in the way that I've done for other people who have no real bearing on my life, and I haven't done for my mom. But because the way that I think the way I am best able to tell stories is through writing them, I actually thought that what I would do tonight is read, so every year, so Natalie mentioned the 69th birthday, my mom's 69th birthday, where my mom's request was that everybody bring a poem or a piece of writing or a bit of prose or something that they really loved, their favorite kind of piece of writing. And I went back furiously through all my English 301 and 303 and my English major textbooks, and I was like, I've got to find something very erudite and very intellectual, and found like absolutely nothing. So I wrote something. So I wrote this poem, and like, we're not big criers in my family. I don't know, I think, right? We're not really very touchy-feely crying types. And on that 69th birthday, and my mom was not sick at that stage that we knew, I don't, Nat and others, Stace and others who were there, I don't know if you remember, but I couldn't get through that poem. I could not read it. I really struggled. I was very, very, very emotional. Tristan was one year, or well, not even, actually, he wasn't even one at that stage. And maybe it was hormones, I don't know. But I wrote this poem, which I read to her and which I want to read to you guys. And then after she died, on her birthday every year, I haven't managed to do it every year, but I try to write another poem. And it was also the way I used to communicate with my mom, and towards the end of her life when she was very ill. I found that she was generally asleep when I came to visit, and so I used to write her long messages so that when she woke up, she would read about what went on during the day, and I'd say, this is what Tristan was up to, and this is just the minutiae of the day, and I'd leave them there in writing. And I've subsequently, in this last couple of weeks, actually found those letters, which were very, very hard to read. So, okay, I'll stop talking now, and I'm going to just read it to you, because they also show, some of them show these little the little details. And it's really, with Phylis, it's about the little details. It was all about taking the small things, the mundane, the people or the items or the issues that others might not have noticed, and really kind of elevating them. And those are the things we always remember. And usually when you guys are here for the memorial shiur, you know, we try every year to kind of have something little. You know, Philip still drinks out of the soup cup, that's the big soup mug, and we've had the little pashminas, and we've had the notebooks and things that I think Wendy messaged me to say how she remembers the little things that we've had every year because they were so Phyllis. So on that 69th birthday party, the poem that I wrote this one. So this was 2005. When first I opened my eyes, it was you I saw. When next I opened my eyes, it was you I saw. For 31 years, I've opened my eyes and seen you, smiling, watching, helping, teaching, loving. What teacher gave you skill in love? It was surely a grandmaster. What doctor prescribed the doses of your caring? It was surely a physician. What writer scripted the verses of your generosity? It was surely a poet laureate. Now I too am a mother and must take my lead from you, but I cannot match the unsurpassable. I can only smile and watch and help and teach and love as you have shown me. Ever grateful that when first I opened my eyes, it was you I saw. So that was the poem that I really struggled to get through. And then subsequently, there are these two other little bits, which I think really describe Phylis. I wrote this in 2006 to my mother on what would have been her 70th birthday. Yeah, she would have been 70. I thought of you today as I do every day, as I do every second of every minute of every day. I thought of you today as you might have been, draped in beige, part hippie, part madam, turning lappies into finery, turning stories into histories, making lists, eating carob, drinking ginger tea, caring without limit. I miss you with longing that extends deeper than the roots of the acacia, higher than the astronaut's quest, further than an angel's reach, though you may be that angel. I know you see us. Would that seeing was through your own tortoiseshell lenses. Remember her tortoiseshell glasses. I know that you watch over us. Would that watching was from your own balcony at sunset. I know that you protect us. Would that protection was by wrapping us in pashminas the way it was. May wherever you are now be a place of ultimate comfort, a place where you are draped in beige, eating chocolate, drinking champagne, safe in knowing that we will love you always. And then a last little one, actually the two other little ones. This was in 2010. It was actually on Mother's Day, 2010. I'm not sure why significantly I wrote this. I wrote this, and then my sister wrote a very funny, irreverent and response, which I will not read out. But anyway, this one I think a lot of you will be able to relate to in your memories of her. So it was the 9th of May, 2010. And I wrote, it's Mother's Day, and up there, I hope someone has laid you a breakfast table brimming with your favorite things, just as we used to do. Peppermint crisp and Kit Kat, eaten with sheer delight and no stomach ache. She suffered for so many years with stomach ache whenever she ate her favorite things. Apple compote, the way grandma made it, or if not grandma, then her generation. Toast and marmalade, the orange one, which tastes like medicine to me, but nectar to you. Fresh pawpaw with the pips hollowed out and discarded. No need for you to treat arthritis with old wives' tales up there. A cup of Earl Grey tea, steaming hot, the way true Russian blood can take it. And no canderel or sweetener this time either, but real cubes of sugar served in a silver bowl with the daintiest of serving spoons. I hope it's all laid on platters of Chaim Rabinovit's pottery, spread with doilies, and covered by net blankets with beading around the edges. I hope the weather is ripe for your morning walk. Take your navy peaked cap with the white daisies, your Le Sportsack waist belt, stocked with tissues, though you'll probably still wear one up your sleeve, your taupe-colored Yakira tracksuit, and your sensible shoes. You'll swing your arms and breathe in swaths of fresh air, remark on the ambient light and the juxtaposition of building styles. I wish I could meet you halfway. Happy Mother's Day to the incomparable mom. And then I'm going to finish with this and give someone else because I've taken too much time. This is a poem for my mother on what would have been her 84th birthday. So that was in 2020. Today is a birthday of ironies. This week's Parsha is Chaye Sarah. It's the first time I've noticed the connection. And it strikes me as ironic, Professor Sarah, that this story of her life is of her death. Today, I walked with the dog and the lead through Glen Forest, over rivers, up hills. I picked a leaf that I noticed for its special markings. I thought I'd take it home as a stamp or a press. I never do that. Notice leaves, notice markings, pick to preserve. And I thought, what a Phylis thing to do. Tomorrow, I go for my first colon check. I'm 46, so I'm told that it's early. But since you were you and I am me, and the two of us so alike, I'd rather be early. The irony is that today is the prep, and I'm stuck drinking soup, juice, and water, using ladylike euphemisms for base body functions, and thinking, what a Phylis day this is. Happy birthday, Mom. Any day that is a Phylis day is a good one. Those are my memories. Over to the next.
Is Simona on? I can't see. Not yet.
Yes, Simona's here.
I am back.
Right, go for it, Simone.
Hi everyone. Sorry about having to jump off for a moment. Thank you for this opportunity. Wow, Joe, like I just have just your descriptions just brings so much back. Thank you for that. So the story I want to tell was actually a few days before Mark and I got married, and I'm telling it because it was just such a quiet a moment with Phylis, and just sort of depicts the way that she was, just her soft, very soft, generous, kind nature. And I'd come by the house in Clifton. I can't remember why I'd come by. I think maybe to drop something off, and it was sort of in the middle of the Timmeldeck leading up to our wedding. And I was feeling quite overwhelmed with all the activities. And I came in, and I didn't express that, but I think she must have seen it. And she took my hand and she took me to her bedroom, and she put me into her side of the bed under the covers. And there was a vase of lavender, fresh lavender. And she bought me a cup of chamomile tea. And she said, I'm just going to leave you here. And I probably spent a couple of hours there. And it was just this moment to sort of take a deep breath and let go of everything else that was going on. But more than that was this moment where I felt so seen at that time. I, as a new bride, of course, there's all this excitement, but there was another part as well. And she saw that, and she just knew what I needed in that moment. And I will never forget that, like, real deep knowing and kindness. And of course, I have so many stories, but that was just a private moment that I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thanks, Simone. So using one of Joe's magnificent lines about Phylis, she says, Phylis turned stories into histories. But I want to add to that, and I'd like to say that Phylis turned friends into family. And I think, Adi, you're definitely one of those. And I think the fact that, we're all here to commemorate these many years later is because we felt part of Phylis's family. So please, will you share with us?
Absolutely. I don't know where to begin, actually, Natalie. This is what I remember. Two things that I remember, which can never do justice to the experience of being embraced by Phylis as a friend who took me into her family in a way that I could never have. The first thing that I remember is that I met her when I was very young. I was friends with Mendel Kaplan. Mendel said, you must meet my friend Cecil Jowell and his girlfriend, Phylis Jowell. Well, from that minute on, Phylis took me on as a person, as if there was nobody else. This is how she made me feel, as if there was nobody else in her world as special as I was. Since I'd always lived with an older brother who was devoted to his life and career in medicine, and his younger sister was not particularly interesting to him at that stage, here was a woman who suddenly made me feel so unique and so special. I was 17, she was 20. The next thing I know, we're all at the Skunda Street shiur because Phylis and Cecil got married. And it was the biggest wedding I had ever attended. And I was just overwhelmed that I was part of this incredible family and this wonderful women. The next little story I'll share with you, and it by no means does justice to the incredible friendship that I enjoyed with her all the years. I was invited to visit her and Cecil, and I think Sharon, who might have been 2 at the time, to visit them in Springbok. And what I had to do was to get myself to an airport. It wasn't our Cape Town airport. It was a little airport for small planes that took off and went to places like Springbok. And this is what Phyllis had organized for me. The next thing I know, I'm in this 8 or 10-seater aeroplane. It was much bigger than a 10-seater aeroplane. And I forget how long, but there I was with a pilot, pointed out all aspects of the Cape to me as we flew over in the direction of Springbok. When the wind picked up, I was completely mesmerized. I mean, what did I know? I just finished school at Parktown. I was teachers training college. Life was very ordinary, very predictable. And suddenly I'm flying over these mountains and these rivers. And we're approaching Springbok, and the wind picks up, and it's really quite gusty. But I wasn't afraid. I could have been, I should have been. I'd never been in a small airplane like that before. And the pilot is just saying, down boy, as if pushing a dog down. Eventually we landed on the ground, and there was Phyllis at the airport to welcome me. And I was embraced by Springbok, by Phyllis, by Cecil, enjoyed Sharon as a babe, and unforgettably, indelibly inscribed in my memory. Phyllis felt like the sister that I never had, and I just thought it was uniquely for me. But in fact, she was uniquely like that for absolutely everybody. And I have to tell you that Phyllis and the Jowells are in my mental landscape permanently. There isn't a week that goes by when I don't think and I don't remember. And then, of course, we had that wonderful privilege of doing the book together on the Jews into Kookaboom country, the Jews of Namaqualand. I mean, what a treat. Everything about being with Phyllis, being around Phyllis, and consequently around the family was an extraordinary treat. Now I've got to empty my wardrobe because I don't need the stuff that I've got hanging there anymore. But so many of the things that I own had to do with Shabbat at the Jowells, Yontif at the Jowells, New Year at the Jowells, these wonderful items of clothing that I want to hand over to my great nieces who live in Liverpool, and I'm hoping they will come and take them. They'll come and take them off me. That have everything to do with remembering Phyllis. There isn't anything. I'm sitting in my lounge right now, and I'm looking at into Kookaboom country, just over the carpet and on the bookshelf. I go into the bedroom, and there are all the clothes hanging in the wardrobe. Memories of her are indelible to the day I no longer need to inhabit this world. So bless her and bless all of you. And I'm eternally grateful for my life with Phyllis and consequently all the Jowells.
Thank you,
That's
Aileen.
it.
Thank you, thank you. Another very special friend who also attended all the shiurim and just an important part of Phyllis's life. Marcia, would you like to unmute yourself?
Are you talking about me, Marcia Levison? I don't know, there's quite a lot of Marcias.
Yes, you.
Gosh, well, I didn't really prepare anything to say. I didn't know it would be, quite in the format that it is. But I want to say thank you for having me, and to pick up on what Adi said, where she said a friend, she was a friend and she became part of the family. Well, I don't know if you all know that I'm actually part of the family. My mother's was a Jowell, and I became a friend. So we were very much intermingled in that same way. And then one of my very early memories of Phyllis, probably the earliest almost, is we were both at UCT. She was a little bit ahead of me. And we went on a train to Johannesburg because it was a NUSAS conference. And my mother for some reason she was in a mood or something, wouldn't provide me with any clothes or anything like that. And I was very miserable on the train. And I happened to be in the compartment with Phyllis. And she didn't know me very well, but she did know that I was related to Cecil. And, you know, we struck up a conversation, and she immediately embraced me as a family member to me. They were not at that time married. And we were talking about it, and she said, "What are you going to wear?" And I told her I didn't have anything to wear. And this is Phyllis from, you know, she was a teenager then. She opened her suitcase there and then in the compartment, and she pulled out things for me. "This is for you." And she nicknamed me Kitty. She said, "You look like a kitty." Because I was slanting eyes. So from then all the way through in Johannesburg, she looked after me. You know, I was from Cape Town as well. So it was strange to me. And she became a sort of surrogate mother, although she was not that much older. And so all the way through my life, Phyllis has been there as an icon and an idol. And I just wanted to say that in my memory of Phyllis, what I remember is the way that her beautiful soul was reflected in her beautiful face and her beautiful smile. And I think, you know, Mark is saying that he remembers her all the time. She's almost as if she was there. I do too, in some strange way. And I just wanted to make that point that Phyllis was that sort of person. You know, who other person do you know? At least I don't know, who had such an indelible impression on everybody around her.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think that's what makes her so special. She was a beautiful soul in a beautiful body, and she was so magnificent to everybody. Just to pick up another little point, that, you know, she got into the life of everybody, no matter how famous or how small or big or important they were. Phyllis was there for them, with her beautiful presentation of food, whether it was a cup of tea or whether it was a big meal and a hug meal that we so often shared. And I know Louisa, and also, who can't be with us, and also dear Sylvia Magid, who loved her so much. We would all be there, and it was all so wonderful. And I just want to thank her. I want to keep on thanking her for being in my life. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you, Marcia. The next group of people that are going to talk are people that I'm not even sure even met Phyllis or knew her well, but because are so much part of the Morasha community, Joe and Richard's life, friends who really just, because Phyllis, even after her passing, it says Yaakov Avinu lo met, that Jacob, our forefather, never died. Because of how present she still was, really can talk about it tonight. So first up, Kim Katz, please.
No, it's the 12.
Oi. Hello. Thanks for having me. Okay, so what I wanted to speak about was, I didn't know Phyllis very well, and I had only recently joined the community. So I was kind of finding my way around this beautiful community that I felt very loved by. And I wanted to help in any way. And I love gardens. I don't really have green fingers, but I do love gardens and flowers and trees. Anyway, so the shul said, there's this amazing donor, the Phyllis and Cecil were sponsoring the renovation of the garden that wasn't actually a garden. It was more like a sand pit, because the neighbors had been building a block of flats and was using it as their dump, where they put all their rubble and stuff. So they were finishing the building next door, and now the garden, the dump area was left as it is, and everybody wanted it to become a garden. And Phyllis had some ideas, and I was asked if I would meet with this woman, Phylis. I didn't know who she was, but I was eager to get involved. And we met at the shul, and we stood on the corner of, just past where the brocha room is, looking onto this sand pit, really. And firstly, I was like quite blown away by her majestic aura. She really just like stood, beautiful posture also. And she said to me, this is what I envisage. I'd like this to be a park-like garden where children can play freely. At the time, there was one little tree on the side that hadn't grown very tall or whatever. And she said, I would like the edges of the garden lined with tall trees. It must be very low maintenance. She doesn't want any like of these flower beds and stuff, because she says then it's too high maintenance for the shul to look after. She wants it to be a very natural looking park-like garden. And we got around doing it. And I mean, and we spoke often on the phone. And it was really, I think, in the last 3 months or so of her life, I didn't realize she wasn't well, but I couldn't meet with her often because she wasn't feeling well. And I wanted to get the garden done when I knew that that she was very ill. And all I can say is that we got it planted in its very early stage, but I wanted her to see it. And she came to shul on one of her last shul visits. And she stood on the corner of the garden, and I just felt so proud that we were able to celebrate this garden together, even though she never saw it in its full development, but she knew we had done everything we could to make it look like a park. And now all the kids and her grandchildren get to enjoy the garden that she actually planted with her in mind. And it's just, I always think of that when I'm at Morasha, because it's the garden she blesses our community with. So that's it.
They say the wisest people are those that are able to plant things for the future, and that certainly was Phylis. But connected to that, of course, our very dear Rebbetzin Aviva Thurgood, Rebbetzin Morasha, leader of this community that many of you on this call are part of, but even if you aren't, very, very close to Cecil and Phylis's heart, and to the Jowell family. Baruch Hashem have celebrated many, many smachot, but also have held together, in hard times, and Richard being so involved in the refurbishment and redevelopment of Morasha after the fire. So Rebbetzin Aviva, over to you.
Straight back at you, Rebbetzin Natalie. So I'm actually feeling quite emotional, and I'm not someone that cries easily, but for the last 8 years that we've been here, every year I've got to attend Rebbetzin Natalie's beautiful Divrei Torah and honoring the Yortzeit of Phylis, and I just really am sad that I never got to meet her, and I really every year look forward to hearing about this incredible woman. And I think especially coming up to Rosh Hashanah and having things to aspire to, it's just incredible to listen to the stories about her. And there are 2 areas that really have touched my life directly from Phylis that I wanted to thank her for, and be able to thank her publicly for. And the first is exactly what Kim described, the garden. We sit there every single Shabbat. We've had COVID now, and the shul service has been dropped to 2 hours. But this past Shabbat, the sun was beautiful. We sat in that garden for an extra hour, and it was just filled with the laughter and play of children. And I often look at those trees and feel protected by Phylis, feel held by Phylis, and just thank you for her vision, and thank you to the entire family for really understanding the importance of family and understanding the value of having children and having that space. And it definitely is, I think, one of the highlights. I'm sorry to everyone who rebuilt the beautiful shul. The shul is beautiful, but the garden really is incredible. And I must tell you that the morning after the fire, when I broke the news to Shalva, our oldest daughter, who's now almost 9 years old, and the first thing she said to me was, is the garden okay? And I think that's really just an indication. I mean, she loves the shul, she loves the Torah, she loves everything that is about the shul, but it was so comforting for her to hear the garden hadn't been touched. And who knows, maybe it's really in the merits of Phylis and everything that she's done for our community, that garden didn't have a single element of burn on it. You know, there wasn't a single ember that blew across. And it's as magnificent. Those trees were protected. It was a big part of the rebuild to keep those trees. And just thank you for giving us that. And the second element is daily. My children are all at Phylis Jowell now, all 4 of them, even little Mary. And it's just a space where everyone is loved and the value of family is reinforced. And I really believe that it's Phylis's values that have infiltrated into the school. And just a really big thank you to the family for everything. I don't think you appreciate what you've given to us and the entire Cape Town community with the gifts of Morasha and Phylis Jowell School. Thank you so much.
I know I'm not on the billing, but I'm going to do the rabbinic thing and just jump in. Just especially about the pleasure I've had over the last couple of years to really develop my friendship with Cecil more. And Cecil, I'm very happy that you're in America, but I do miss you, I will tell you. But when I spoke to Cecil on Phylis's yahrzeit, he just told me such a beautiful story. And he said that often they'd be at social events and Phylis would have disappeared. And I think many spouses know that feeling of they're around somewhere, suddenly their spouse. And he says invariably he would find Phylis speaking to somebody who was feeling down, who was having a hard time. She was cheering them up. She was being with them in that way that Simone spoke about, that sort of empathy and sensitivity. Again, I also did not merit to meet Phylis in her life, but I've met her through her family and through these stories, and I do feel very connected and appreciative to this beautiful soul who was in the world and has given us all so much in her legacy.
Thank you, Rabbi. Our next speaker, Talia, also I don't think met Phylis. And I also know that Talia is not a big public speaker, but you got to know that if Talia has chosen to speak tonight, it just means it's so meaningful for her and for Joe, being a very, very close friend, to honor Phylis tonight. So Talia, over to you.
Thanks, Nat. Yeah, I am one of those people who didn't have the opportunity of meeting Phylis. We only arrived in Cape Town about 2 years after she passed. But upon arrival in Cape Town, I met Joe. And it's been nearly 12 years now that we've been friends. And we spend a considerable amount of time together. And on many occasions, we'll be out and about and we'll bump into someone or we'll meet someone. And that someone, upon hearing that Joe's mom was Phylis, automatically gets a smile on their face and immediately starts to relay a story about Phylis or the beautiful characteristics that Phylis had that they remember. And it's through these recollections that I've experienced with Joe, with meeting these people, that there are certain things that stand out. And for me, I've heard what a gentle, kind woman Phylis was, and how she always put other people before herself. And she did things for other people because she knew what was right for them. She did things for people that many people didn't know about, but that was just so important for the person that she was helping. And I hear all these beautiful things about Phylis. And then I think to myself, wow, how lucky am I? Because I have a friend who has those same characteristics. Mm-hmm. And as opposed to Joe, who doesn't get emotional, I get very emotional. So, yeah, so I just want to say that I think her mom would be really very proud of her. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Tal. So as we spoke about, Phylis made her friend's family, but there was nothing more important than family. And Mika, would you like to, her niece, just represent your part of the family here tonight?
Yes, I do. So the one thing that I want to say about Phylis, what she taught me, is defending your person. So Phylis and my mom, you probably couldn't find more opposite people ever. And I found it really easy to speak to Phylis, especially when they moved next door. And I often go sit on the balcony with her and talk to her. And whenever I spoke not badly or wanted some advice on my mom, the only time she would ever get like a stern voice, and I was not allowed to talk badly about my mother. She defended her sister. It was the most beautiful thing. And I didn't have a sister, but Jo is my sister, and I had that relationship with Jo. The most beautiful times of my life was going up to Joburg and being with Phylis and Jo. Sharon is in America. Mark was there with Soren. And I used to walk into that house, and Johanna would give me the hot chocolate, and there'd be mozzarella, the platter mozzarella. Jo would be in the kitchen with Marnie, Gail, and Nat. And my mom would leave me there. You'd go somewhere else. And it would just be like heaven. You'd feel like the most important person to Phylis when you were with her. And I remember one time I went to Joburg and my mom left me there. And the one thing was Jo is now a little bit older than me, and she was going with her other cousins to watch Karate Kid. No, they were going somewhere else. And I was so upset that I couldn't go. They were going to a movie. And Phylis took me, and she took me to Karate Kid. And it was just like, she didn't want me to feel left out. Another thing is I went to the house, and they had this beautiful, beautiful garden in Oaklands, and there was like a what's it called, Joe? Like the brown, like a little Wendy house. And I walked into the house. I walked there, and Phylis said, "Come, I want to show you something." And she had done this Wendy house out for me with dolls and sweets and everything. And I remember looking back at her, and she was like, "Do you like it?" And I was like, "It's the best thing ever." And it was just so beautiful, and did the most thoughtful things that nobody kind of takes it, nobody notices. Like Jo also does that. So Phylis was, to me, a great teacher, a great source of stability, and she loved her family so much. I just remember her also with my granny. She's just a special person, and yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Mika. Richard, you are now the host. As you were a very special part of Phylis's life. She always not only spoke about her children, but her children-in-law as if they were her children. So I know you've got something special for us, so please go ahead.
So I always learned after being married to Jo for almost probably 20 years, you never ever speak after Jo, be it at your wedding, at your son's bar mitzvah, and now I've subsequently learned you actually can't talk after any of Jo's friends or her family because everyone speaks so well. You can only kind of fall short. But what people have said tonight have been truly remarkable. And I kind of listened to it, and I kind of think to myself, like, there's so you almost took her for granted, if that makes sense, that you didn't kind of fully appreciate her at the time. And we should never do that. We should learn to kind of appreciate people at the time. So yeah. So what I did as a separate thing, I went into Google Photos, and using the Google algorithm, Google kind of selected from a whole bunch of pictures I have of Phylis. It put together a 55-second montage. And it's really interesting to look at the photos, and it's going to happen quite quickly. It will happen in 55 seconds. But the pictures that Google has chosen of Phylis are really interesting to me. One is it confuses Joe with Phylis at one stage, which is quite interesting. But how this kind of, the pictures start in 1999, and there's a picture of Mendel and Cecil and Phylis. And I think it's I think it was at their new house, and Mendel's putting up the mezuzah, and it was you'll see how it goes through, and it kind of, there's this constant thread of Cecil, and there's this constant as the family grows, and you'll see there's one wonderful picture in Italy with her whole family, which was an amazing holiday. But yeah, I won't give any more. I'm going to share the little clip. So give me 1 second. I hope it comes through clearly. I hope so. Oops. Okay, here we go.
Beautiful.
That last, the last photo is of Phylis. You can't see, but there's a parrot on her shoulder, and I think this totally kind of sums Phylis up for me. Certainly, we got this parrot. Joe loved parrots for some bizarre reason, and we got this parrot, and his name was Dudley, and the parrot was absolutely Michiganer. It was totally Michiganer, and we you know, there's only one person who would accept the crazy parrot, and that was Phylis. So we gave the parrot to Phylis, and she could never leave the house through the front door because the parrot would see Phylis leaving and would go absolutely crazy because he was so upset that Phylis was leaving. And she had to sneak out the back door so that Dudley, the parrot, would never ever see her. So besides humans, I think animals loved her too.
Very nice, Richard.
Thank you, Rich. We're coming to the end of the evening, and since this is really the Joel evening, I'm going to let Jo conclude. I think she's got a letter from a friend, and just for her to conclude. But to conclude from me, I'm actually sitting right in the middle of my screen because what I realized as Johnny quickly, while he was fixing my computer, is that I've got a Yeshiva College emblem behind me, which I felt was totally, what's the word? Disloyal. So there it is. You can't see it because tonight is about Phylis Jowell, and it will always be such a huge part of my life, having been the principal there for many years. But I've got a much greater part of my life that will always be Phylis Jowell. And I was telling Joe, because my Sarah was born on her yahrzeit every year, and especially as Sarah grows up, and she's just turned 8 on Gimel Elul. I always talk to her about Phylis, and I've got my own little Sarah. Sorry, Phylis, that I didn't call her Pesa. I just couldn't bring myself to do it, but Sarah was there like a bear, and I've got my own little piece of Phylis that I love and treasure every day. And certainly, you know, when I feel it's necessary and important, I tell Sarah about Phylis. But one thing coming up is Rat Hashem. Look forward to giving birth in a few weeks, and Phylis was there for me when I gave birth to Ashira. I didn't know who to call because we had no family in Joburg, but the Joel family was always my people that I put down as my family when they said, you know, who the second people to call. And when I had my Ashura, it was Phylis that came to be with Aaron while I was in hospital. So I'm going to be thinking of Phylis, even though, thank God, I've got my parents and in-laws and a whole lot of people here in Joburg that could be with my children while I give birth. I'm definitely going to miss Phylis on that day and remember how incredibly kind she was to me and to my family. So just to wish again the family Arichat Yamim and everybody a Ktiva v'Chatima Tova. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you. Oh, thanks, Nat. I'm not in a great state to talk. I didn't think I would be quite so blubbery. I'm not sure if anybody else wants to say anything. I just have my friend Kathy, who one of my very oldest friends, some of my other oldest friends are also on from Joburg, sent a memory she wanted me to read out. She said, I have so many fond memories of your mom. I loved her so much. I will always remember her smell. I think that was Izzy Miyake.
Yes.
Izzy Miyake. Her kindness, packing with tissue paper. She always used to put a layer of tissue paper in between all her clothes when she traveled in the suitcase. And the way when she entered a room, everything felt brighter. And so I think, yeah, that's probably the perfect summary. I've so loved hearing the stories. Those photos were wonderful, Rich. And they're never enough, and it's never enough, and hopefully there will always more. So maybe next year we can pick it up again, and add to the treasure trove. But I'm certainly very grateful to have a far fuller trove than at the beginning of the night. So thanks everybody. It's so great to see these faces, all the faces. Lots of hugs and love and safe well wishes to everybody. Natalie, thank you as always. You are part of the Jowell family, from the school to the home to the shul to the everything, and an evening like this. And memories of Phylis are not complete without you and your part, the part that you play in helping us access them. So it's a great gift that you give us every year and every day. So everybody be well. Thank you so much. Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you.
It was wonderful.
Can I
wonderful.
get Chair?
Bye.
Chair?
Thank you, everybody.